everyone, welcome back to True Crime Buzz. I'm your host, Amber, and as y'all may or may not know, Vanessa is still out of commission for just a little while. She will be back very soon. With me today again is Miss Brittany.
Hello.
Let me guess, Diet Coke?
Ding, ding, ding with the trolley. Ring, ring, ring with the bell. What are you drinking?
I am happy to say, well, somewhat happy to say I'm drinking some red wine. It's not Rex Goliath, though. I still couldn't find any.
What in the world? Are people hoarding it?
Damn, COVID ruined everything. It even got my precious Rex Goliath. So I'm drinking box wine, which I have nothing against.
I know that's right.
But it's just, you know, it's out of this boring box. It doesn't have any cute little rooster on the front, so it doesn't bring me as much joy.
I feel like you just drink Rex Goliath for the rooster.
Well, it's the rooster and the price. It's like $4 or $5 a bottle, and that's in my budget.
Good. Yes, for sure.
So I'm so excited for today. I feel like, okay, so let me just be straight up. I went back and listened to a couple episodes, and apparently every episode almost I say, I'm excited for today, but I am legit excited for this. This is not just me trying to be upbeat and peppy. I've been looking forward to this for months.
Yeah, today is Amber's Christmas present, her non-tangible Christmas present from me to her, because she was literally like, please do this, only you. So here I am doing it, and I fought you on it, but I'm really glad that I did it, because it's reignited my excitement on this case, which that just makes me sound really creepy, but
no, not at all. Yeah, I'm super, super, super excited. I can't express enough how excited I am for today.
Today, I'm covering one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. While I usually try to stay away from the more well-known true crime stories, Amber specifically asked me to cover this one.
I sure did.
Due to our history with a movie about this case. The man we were talking about was a devoted father of two and husband, a Cub Scout leader, a veteran with several medals, a college graduate, and the president of his church's council. This sounds like a great guy, but this man led a double life. A family man who in his spare time enjoyed stalking people, binding them, torturing them, and killing them. That's right, today I'm covering B.T.K.
I love it!
I love your
squeal! I'm so excited! That is how excited I am.
Well, I'm glad you're excited.
Before we get started, should we tell the tale of why we are bonded over BTK so much?
Yes, I 100% think you should tell that story.
Okay, so, God, when was that? We were out of high school, right?
Yeah, it was like 06, 07. Like, we had recently graduated.
Okay, so, to any Gen Zers out there who don't understand what Blockbuster is, it was kind of like the Netflix of our time, except we did not have the ease of just sitting on our couch and clicking the remote and finding something to watch. We actually had to go to a store and pick out a movie to rent. And then when we were finished, we had to bring it back. Mm-hmm. So anyways, so Brittany and I were bored and we're like, what should we do? We're like, let's go to Blockbuster and go watch something. And we both were just like, let's watch something creepy or scary.
Yeah.
And we were at Blockbuster and we found this movie that was about BTK.
Yeah, it was called BTK.
And we didn't even have to ask each other. We were like, hell yes. Mm-hmm. We grabbed it. And then we went back to your mom's house and watched it.
Yes.
And
but on the way there.
But on the way there. We're driving down Sweeten Creek Road, for those of you who are familiar with the Asheville area. And the movie, we were at least not old enough. It was a DVD, to be fair. Yes. So it wasn't like a VHS tape. But it was sitting up on the dash of my car.
Yep.
And while we're driving down Sweeten Creek, we had the windows down. It just goes flying out the window.
We had to stop and like get out, like pull over in a business parking lot because, I mean, Sweeten Creek is packed at all times.
Yeah.
And get our happy butts out and walk around on the side of Sweeten Creek and look for this DVD of BTK.
Looking like idiots.
Yeah.
Yes. But thankfully we found it.
Yes, we did find it. It wasn't damaged. We didn't have to pay Blockbuster for it.
No, but we did go back and watch it, and we were just like, holy shit. We knew who BTK was, but we didn't know all the details. And so since then, we have been bonded over BTK, the weirdos that we are.
Yes.
And so when Brittany joined the podcast to take over for Vanessa while she was out, I was like, please, please cover BTK, because I feel like no one else is allowed to cover it, because that is something that we share. That's our inside joke.
That's right. It is. What a weird thing to be bonded over.
Oh, I found it. It is simply called BTK. It came out in 2008, and it's got a 4 out of 10 star rating. So
what?
Do with that what you will.
In my mind, it was great, but I mean, this was 2008.
In my mind, it was amazing.
So we'd been out of high school for 2 years.
Yeah, we were youngins. No responsibilities.
That's right.
No husbands, no kids, no bills to pay. Just, what do you want to do? Let's watch a movie about a serial killer. All right.
And then lose it on Sweeten Creek, the busiest part of Asheville.
Yes. But anyways, so the more important story of today is actually learning about BTK. While he's very popular, I feel like Dahmer and Bundy kind of take the spotlight as far as like the old school killers. People know the name BTK, but I don't think they know all the details as much as they do the other guys.
Right.
So that's another reason I'm excited to do it.
His crimes were older, but because he didn't, get arrested till way later, I feel like it's a newer serial killer. And while people are aware of it, they tend to focus on like the old school serial killers. Plus, Dennis Rader was not super attractive like some people think that Ted Bundy was. So.
And that's up for debate as well.
Yeah, it is. Zac Efron as Ted Bundy. Mm-hmm.
That's a totally different story.
Yes, it is. All right, so let's jump right in. Dennis Lynn Rader was born on March 9th, 1945 in Pittsburgh, Kansas, to Dorothea May and William Elvin Rader. Dennis was one of 4 boys. His brothers were Paul, Bill, and Jeff Rader. He grew up in Wichita with both parents working long hours, which didn't leave much time at all for the kids back at home. Later in life, Dennis has said that he felt ignored by his parents and resented them for this, particularly his mom. Dennis has said that from a young age, he harbored sexual fantasies about torturing trapped and helpless women. He also would spy on women through their windows and steal their underwear and clothes. He would experiment with autoerotic asphyxiation on himself while dressed in the stolen garments. He said that he was pretending to be the victim as part of his sexual fantasy. He would also, I'm so sorry, Amber. I'm so sorry, because I know this is gonna hurt your heart.
Just rip that Band-Aid off.
Okay. He would also torture and kill small animals. So that's lovely. Despite all of this, he was considered normal, polite, and well-mannered in his community because he was able to hide the aforementioned habits very well.
Well, that's like what most of the OG serial killers, most of them were. They were like, oh, they were so normal, and he was just my neighbor. I never would have known.
Yeah, that's an aspect that really kills me because, like, anybody could be a serial killer, you know?
Right?
So after high school, he gave college a shot, but didn't excel. So after a year, he dropped out and joined the Air Force. He served in the Air Force from 1966 to 1970, and in that time, he rose to the rank of Staff Sergeant and was awarded the Air Force Good Conduct Medal, the Small Arms Expert Marksmanship Ribbon, and the National Defense Service Medal. So, he did really well in the Air Force. After getting out of the Air Force, he met and married Paula Dietz in 1971. And then he worked for an outdoor supply company for a short time. And then in 1974, he began working for ADT Home Security, a job that he would keep for a long time. And a job that, in my opinion, really helped him out in his, side life.
Correct. Because he could go in and scope out these people's homes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
On January 15th, 1974, Dennis Rader entered the Wichita home of the Otero family and strangled Joseph and Julie and 2 of their kids, Josephine and Joseph Jr., to death. He stole a radio and a watch and fled the scene. The Otero's older son, Charlie, who was 15 at the time, discovered his slain family later that day. Police discovered semen at the scene, and Dennis later claimed that Josephine Otero was the only child he ever had a sexual fantasy about, but that he derived sexual pleasure from killing. So he basically said that he didn't have a sexual fantasy about doing sexual things to her, but it got him off to kill her, if you know what I mean.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Right. Which is, it's still very gross.
And she was how old?
I don't know how old she was. She was little. She was little.
Ugh.
Yeah. On April 4th, 1974, Dennis waited in the apartment of Catherine Bright. When she returned, he stabbed and strangled her to death. He also shot Catherine's brother Kevin twice, but Kevin survived. Kevin later described Dennis Rader as an average-sized guy, bushy mustache with psychotic eyes. And that was a quote from Time magazine.
That sounds accurate.
Yeah, no, it does. Very accurate. Then, in October 1974, he placed a letter in a library book taking responsibility for the Otero family murders. It was poorly written and in part read, "It's hard to control myself. You probably call me psychotic with sexual perversion hang-up." He warned he would kill again and said, "The code words for me will be bind them, torture them, kill them, B.T.K." And the initials stuck. Despite his murderous ways, he was able to hide those aspects of his life. And in 1975, Dennis and Paula had a son, Brian. Then, in March of 1977, he locked Shirley Vian's kids in their bathroom and then bound and strangled Shirley Vian to death. And then in December of 1977, he entered Nancy Fox's home and strangled her to death. He then called 911 to report the murder and then left.
So he called 911.
Yeah, he called 911. He didn't give his name. He just called to report the murder.
Just to report it. That's really weird.
I'd like to know why her.
You know, most serial killers, they kind of gradually push the envelope a little further, push it a little further, but they usually use the same method. He seems a little all over the place.
Yeah. Well, he's very methodic and keeps in the same way he kills people, but I'm still not sure as to why he called 911 for her specifically. Right. I mean, it's kind of different, but there was no explanation offered for that. So I guess we'd have to ask Dennis Rader, which I'm not trying to do.
Nope. No thanks.
In January 1978, Dennis sent a poem to a local newspaper about Shirley Vian's murder, and then a couple weeks later he sent another letter to a local TV station in which he said he killed Shirley Vian, Nancy Fox, and another unknown victim. He also mentioned Ted Bundy and David Berkowitz in this particular letter. I should mention that the name he used for some of these letters was Bill Thomas Killman, which is an acronym for B.T.K.
Oh, so clever.
Yeah, so very. Also in 1978, Dennis and Paula welcomed a baby girl named Carrie, and she's a huge, huge part of this story. So remember her name. In 1979, Dennis graduated Wichita State with a degree in Administration of Justice, which is quite the feat when you realize he was killing, working a job, raising a family, going to school, and taunting police.
How did he have the time?
The time, the energy, the motive. I don't even know.
Holy cow. He must not have slept.
That's what I'm saying. Also, in 1979, Dennis waited in an elderly woman's home, but left before she returned, and then sent her a letter to inform her that B.T.K. had been in her home. How creeped out would you be?
That's the one word that pops in my head more than anything. You know, like word association, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Right. Anytime I hear BTK, immediately I picture his stupid face and I think, what a creep.
Right, yeah, exactly.
The biggest creep.
So after he sent that letter, the police were desperate for some sort of lead in the BTK case. And so they released the 1977 911 call that he made when he reported Nancy Fox's murder in hopes someone would recognize his voice, but there were no leads with that. Then, 6 years went by without any known BTK activity, but on April 27, 1985, Dennis Rader snuck into his neighbor, Maureen Hedges' home. He cut the phone lines, bound and tortured her, eventually strangling her to death. Once he killed Mrs. Hedge, he took her body to his church, Christ Lutheran Church, and laid her on the floor and put her in different types of bondage and took pictures of her. He then loaded her corpse into his car and dumped her body out in the country. Her body was discovered days later on the side of the road. Dennis Rader's daughter, Carrie, later on in life revealed that her family talked about Maureen Hedges' murder and how sad it was and how scary it was that it was so close to home.
Oh my God.
Right?
Like, can you imagine, like, sitting at the dinner table, like, thinking you're the most normal family ever and talking about this, just to fast forward years later and realize that was your dad.
Yeah, killing your neighbor.
Killing your neighbor.
Yeah, and Carrie said
God.
that she wasn't close to her or anything, but she had, like, talked to her while she was, like, walking the dog or out getting the mail, and she was a sweet little old lady.
And then to take it that step further and do that all in, like, the church and...
Right? What?
Like, why? Why?
There is no rhyme or reason to why serial... Well, there is a rhyme and reason, but to a sane person...
To them.
Right.
Right.
to a
we'll
sane person, it
doesn't,
you know. In 1986, Dennis Rader took his family to Disneyland. They had a great time, and when they returned, he killed a woman named Vicki Wegerly in her home.
Because why not?
Because why not?
Let's just celebrate this family vacation.
Yep. Back from Disneyland, back to murdering, you know? BTK's final victim's name was Dolores Davis. On January 19th, 1991, he prepared his hit kit and then went to Dolores' home on Hillside. He had previously cased the home and couldn't figure out how to get in. So after arriving at Miss Davis's home on this cold night, he picked up a concrete block and threw it through a window and entered her home. Dolores came running out of the bedroom thinking a car had hit her house, and Dennis told Dolores that he was on the run from the law.
Okay.
So,
was this part of his plan?
I don't know. I think he was just running with it. Because, like, what?
Okay.
Okay. So he handcuffed her and told her he was going to take her car keys and some food to try to keep her calm and reassure her. Those are the words he used, as he tried to reassure her and keep her calm. Which I'm like, that sounds nice, but we all know what you're going to do. So.
This guy.
I know. So he walked around acting like he was getting necessities like food and blankets, but he stole her things. And then he came back, checked to make sure she was still handcuffed. She was. He removed the handcuffs, tied her up, and then strangled her to death with a pair of pantyhose. He then wrapped Dolores' body in a blanket and put her in the trunk of her car. He drove her to a spot to dump her body, but realized he had forgotten one of his guns at her house. So he drove back to her house and found his gun. It was right as he walked in the door. He just bent down and looked, and it was like under the couch. Easy to find. So then he put Dolores in his car and dumped Dolores' body northeast of Sedgwick County under a bridge. He said he really had to hurry because he had a commitment to get to.
Of course he did, because he's so busy.
Yeah.
Like I was saying earlier, it's like he does these weird things in each one, so nothing is kind of flowing. Mm-hmm. But I bet he's doing that. I feel like that's his way of pushing the envelope. Mm-hmm. Like, normally he just goes in, just gets it done, and it's over. But it's almost like he's savoring it. Like, he knows what's going to happen. He knows what he's going to do, but he wants to
mix it
almost
up.
Watch her or mix it up. Yeah.
Keep it interesting, you know?
See how much time I can waste before I do this.
I would have liked to have known what commitment he had to get back to, but he didn't say.
It could have been anything, and it was probably all great family-oriented, wholesome things.
Which is just insane. After Dolores' murder, Dennis started focusing on work and family life. He quit working at ADT the same year in 1991 and started working for the Wichita suburb of Park City as a compliance supervisor. He was known to be a real stickler for rules at his job. He would measure people's grass and chase stray animals with a tranquilizer gun.
So next time I feel like I am too OCD and too type A, I'm just going to think of Dennis Rader and be like, nah, girl, you're good.
You're good. You don't walk around measuring people's grass. That's right.
Oh, no.
He was like a Karen before a Karen. You know what I mean?
He's like the dude Karen.
Anytime I see a dude Karen from here on out, I'm going to call them Dennis. I'm going to make that a thing.
You're either a Dennis or a Karen.
That's right. There you go. He thoroughly enjoyed having authority over members of his community. During these years, he also enjoyed being a Boy Scout troop leader and became president of his church's council.
See, this is the part that I hate. I mean, I obviously hate that he murdered and did all these horrible things, but to like be so involved and be like in the Boy Scouts, but be like the actual troop leader and then be in his church and his community and doing all this, it's like John Wayne Gacy. It's the same thing.
Ugh.
If you want to be a douchebag in your life, that's fine, to each their own, but like don't try to cover it up so much that you're someone on this the pillar of the community.
That's right. He was trying to be.
It's like they're trying so hard to be so that when, should they ever get caught, oh, it's so unbelievable. They know what they're doing. I hate it.
I hate it. But you don't hate it either, because what did our boy Dexter do? Did he also perhaps really try to keep that under wraps and be a great member?
He was a true pillar of the community because he got rid of all the bad guys, and I'll defend that till I die.
Yes, he was a vigilante, Amber, but he also led a double life.
Vigilantes are different.
I know. I mean, Dennis Rader is a creep and Dexter's amazing, but you know what I'm saying. So everything was quiet on the BTK front, and Dennis was living his best life, but then came the year 2004. 2004 marked the 30th anniversary of the Otero family murders, and local news outlets ran stories about the anniversary. BTK was back in the spotlight, and this sparked excitement in Dennis Rader because, let's all face it, he was an attention whore.
1000%.
And so BTK came out of retirement to play a good old game of cat and mouse with the authorities. He sent them on a scavenger hunt, leaving Special K serial killer boxes by road signs and in beds of pickups, and Barbie dolls posed as victims, and even jewelry from the victims all over Wichita. He sent local media outlets and police several letters filled with items relating to his crimes, such as pictures, a word puzzle, and even an outline for a BTK story.
Wait, so back up. So did he kill again?
No.
Or did he just...
No, he just came out to, like, screw with the police.
About his previous crimes in the last 30 years.
Yeah, and that they hadn't caught him, and it's been 30 years. I'm like, look at me, look what I did. I've evaded you guys for 30 years.
Wow.
Attention whore.
Yeah.
In one of the letters, he asked police if a floppy disk could be traced. And I know that there are a lot of people that aren't going to know what a floppy disk is. Just Google it, because I'm not doing that work for you.
Dude, I used to get so excited picking out floppy disks.
Yeah, because they came in great colors, you know, and it was like an exciting thing, the different floppy disks.
And you could put like the little label on it and like, this is my senior project. This is that. Yeah.
Floppy disks were great. They were great. But, I mean, there's a whole generation that haven't been around with floppy disks. So Google it if you don't know.
It's a USB drive in a different form.
Right, that was really big.
It was really big and it didn't hold a lot. We've come a long way.
Yes, we have. So he asked them if it could be traced and told them to be honest.
This is the part I can't handle.
I know, like, what?
This all happens over a floppy disk. I can't.
It gets so much better, though. Like, first off, that you would believe the police would be honest, but we're going there. We're going there. So police responded by taking out an ad in the classifieds, as Rader had instructed, that read, "Rex, it will be okay," telling him that they couldn't trace the floppy disk.
Trust me, guy, we can't do it.
Why Rex? I want to know why Rex. Rex, it will be okay. A few weeks later, a package was delivered to a local news station containing a purple floppy disk. The floppy disk contained further instructions for the police. What Dennis didn't count on was that the police would lie to him and that they could trace the floppy disk.
Of course, you idiot.
This was in the days of the internet. Could have asked Jeeves or something, you know? So they were able to trace the floppy disk back to Dennis's church because the original file name was Christ Lutheran Church, and the last person to use the computer was logged on with the name Dennis. Didn't even use a fake name to log on to the computer. Amber.
Because he's such an idiot. Like, all he had to do was just let it go, Elsa, and he would have been the other Zodiac killer of our time.
Yeah.
But no, he just had to keep dangling that carrot in front of the freaking cops, or I guess a donut.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean. Like, he just could not help himself.
Well, who's an attention whore? He's like, oh, they're running news stories about me. Let me amp some stuff up and get some more attention.
And then to make such a dumb mistake.
I know.
So dumb.
30 years you go uncaught and then you lose it on a floppy disk. I just can't.
Floppy disk? More like sloppy disk.
Yes. Yes. Okay, so that coupled with the fact that Dennis Rader drove a black Jeep Cherokee that matched one that was seen on security footage at places where BTK packages had been dropped off, the police felt pretty certain that Dennis Rader was their guy. However, the police wanted concrete evidence to tie Dennis to these murders. So, Wichita police secured a warrant for Carrie, Dennis's daughter's, medical records from Kansas State, where she had gone to college. They compared her DNA from a pap smear and biopsy to the semen that they found from the Otero family murders, and it was a direct match. In an interview later in life, Carrie said that she had no idea that the police did this. In fact, she only learned about it on CNN.
What?
Yes, and she felt so violated that everyone in the nation was talking about something as personal as her pap smear on national TV.
Oh, no.
That's completely
Oh, no.
understandable.
I cannot believe that. I thought when you were talking about it, I thought, yeah, she agreed to it, but she didn't.
No, she had no idea. Yeah, I always thought that she did know about it because, you know, people were like, oh, yeah, BTK, like, his daughter gave her DNA, and that's how they caught him for sure. And I'm like, oh, okay. No, she had no idea.
They took it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I know anybody that listens to this podcast that works in a healthcare field is just screaming, HIPAA.
Ooh, that's awful.
That's such a violation. But
it is.
Silver lining, we found him.
Yes. So the match in the DNA cemented that Dennis Rader was in fact BTK. The Wichita police showed up at Dennis Rader's home on February 25th, 2005 and apprehended Dennis as he rounded the corner on his way home. Inside the home, under a false bottom in the floor, they found jewelry, licenses, and other items from victims. Dennis was arrested and taken in for questioning. When presented with evidence, Dennis said, well, I guess you guys got me. He also asked Lieutenant Ken Landwehr about the floppy disk. He said, I need to ask you, how come you lied to me? How come you lied to me?
Oh my
God. To
God.
which the lieutenant replied, because I was trying to catch you.
This guy.
Right?
He's so cocky and wants so much attention. Like, this is what you wanted, obviously, or else you wouldn't have been dangling them along. They finally catch you and you're mad because the police lied to you.
So that lieutenant said that Dennis Rader was like astonished that the police wouldn't want to continue to play this quote unquote cat and mouse game for the rest of their lives.
In his mind, this is literally just a game.
Yeah.
These are not people's actual lives that have families and friends that are being murdered. It's just a fun game to him.
Exactly. So Dennis was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder. He originally pled not guilty and wouldn't confess to anything about the murder of his neighbor, Maureen Hedge, because it was too close to home. So Carrie, Dennis's daughter, wrote to her dad and told him that she loved him, told him that she and her family were safe, and asked him to plead guilty so that their family and the victims' families wouldn't have to endure a lengthy trial. He then admitted to all the murders, including Mrs. Hedge, and changed his plea to guilty on June 27th, 2005. So, yay for Carrie.
Yes, Carrie.
Yes, girl.
Love her.
Mm-hmm. Neighbors, church members, and his own family were flabbergasted to discover the man they knew was BTK, the man who had been raining terror on their community all of these years, which I bet they were.
Well, yeah, and that's a long time, too, to be killing people.
Right, it really is. He did Boy Scouts and all of these great things and was a churchgoer.
And a family man, and yeah.
So, I'm sure they were a little shocked. While awaiting trial, he did a phone interview with a local reporter in which he called his urge to kill Factor X. And he also admitted that he was planning to kill again and that he actually had someone picked out.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Did he say who they were?
He told the police who they were. And how about the police actually informed the lady that he had planned to kill, that he had planned to kill her after he was arrested.
Oh my God.
Right?
Whew.
Why would you do that, though?
Yeah, what does it matter?
He's locked up.
I
He's
understand
going away.
if he wants to get it off his chest, but, like, the police shouldn't have done that.
No, that's just not okay. So, as part of Dennis's plea, he gave all the terrifying details of his crimes during the trial. People in the courtroom said he would retell these gruesome details with zero signs of remorse. Mm-hmm. And I've watched it, and it is the most matter-of-fact thing ever.
Oh my gosh, you would think he was talking to you about choosing a life insurance plan. Like, I'm not kidding! That's exactly how he acts. He doesn't smile. He doesn't frown. You can tell he doesn't give two shits about his victims whatsoever.
No. Or like the fact that he did these things, and obviously people in the courtroom and victims' families are listening to this.
Yeah.
He wasn't worried.
It's just like another day.
It was bizarre. And victims' families actually did read heartbreaking, I mean absolutely heartbreaking impact statements at the trial, sometimes laced with disdain and understandable anger. Dennis also showed no signs of emotion or remorse when they read their statements. None.
That is exactly what I picture every time I hear BTK, is that face that he gives during the trials where he's talking about stuff like it's just nothing to him.
See, I think of his mugshot, because that looks like
and
the devil. The devil.
That too.
Okay.
And that god-awful receding hairline.
And his hair's all messy. I don't know if they like roughed him up on the way or what, but not a flattering picture.
Not an attractive man.
No. So Dennis Rader was sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences with the possibility of parole after 175 years. So never. He wasn't given the death penalty because his crimes were committed before 1994, when Kansas reinstated the death penalty. And he is serving his time at El Dorado Correctional Facility in Butler County, Kansas. So I guess you can go visit your boy.
So he's still kicking.
Yeah, he's still kicking, unfortunately. And as always, I'm always curious to see what became of killers' families. And I knew that Carrie Rossen is one of the few serial killers' kids who have spoken out. Not many of them like to talk about their parents that have killed people, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, totally understandable.
She's done several interviews, including a 2020 special, and she's released a memoir called A Serial Killer's Daughter, My Story of Faith, Love, and Overcoming. And she actually really fought against that title.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's not all she is, obviously, but she said she came to terms with it, because her publisher was like, no, this has to be the title. But I have personally asked Matt to buy it for me for Christmas.
I was going to say, I'm really interested in that book.
Yeah, well, I'll let you borrow it.
I knew she did interviews, but I didn't know she wrote an actual book, so.
Yes, she did. And in it,
Cool.
She shares letters between her and her dad, her struggles with being labeled a serial killer's kid, but lots of details. But since I currently don't own a copy, I looked for an interview and I stumbled across a great one on YouTube from a Wichita news station, and we will post a link for it.
Definitely.
But I wanted to include some key details from the interview because there were some interesting things, about her life growing up with him and the aftermath of everything that I really felt like were good things to know about. So Carrie said that she and her dad gardened and that Dennis built her and her brother a huge treehouse in their backyard. She described her relationship growing up with her dad as close and said that she preferred fishing with her dad to shopping with her mom. She said he was a very hands-on and involved dad and a good neighbor. And she said, quote, I would give anything to erase what my dad did and bring those 10 people back. And also, I could have my mom and dad back, which that broke my heart. That broke my heart so bad.
I was going to say, I bet he was the best dad because he was that double life serial killer. So he probably was so attentive, so loving, and then just goes out and turns into this other person.
It's insane. I don't even know. I couldn't be that way, but that's why I'm not a serial killer.
Do you know if they ever diagnosed him with any mental health issues?
So we're getting to that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. People constantly question how she, her mom, and her brother had no clue that Dennis was BTK. But Carrie said she just saw a great dad and that sometimes he could have a hot temper and be slightly abusive, but that you don't jump from that to my dad's a serial killer. Also, it should be noted that the last time Dennis Rader killed someone, Carrie was 13. So she was young and he didn't kill the majority of her life. So how would she have known? I hate that question.
Right, you're too young. And when you're 13, you're not paying attention to what your dad's doing.
No, not at all.
So how on earth would you know?
And then, he quit killing after that, He had planned to kill again, but had not. So for most of her life, he was not a serial killer. So she wouldn't have known that mess. Also, Carrie was living in Michigan with her husband when her dad was arrested. So, she was married, living in a different state. Dennis had walked her down the aisle at her wedding, all before he was arrested. When the cops showed up to her door to notify her about her dad's arrest, they asked her if she had heard about BTK, and she thought that they were going to tell her that BTK had killed her grandma because she knew that BTK killed women who lived alone, and she actually asked if her grandma, Dorothea, which was Dennis's mom, was okay. And they were like, what? No? She said that the cops actually had to repeat over and over and over to her that her dad was BTK because she felt sick to her stomach and dizzy. She was holding onto the wall to avoid falling.
Can you imagine if the cops came to your door and said, Sweet Neil
is a killer.
Your precious dad is a serial killer and was the serial killer that's been on the news for the past 30 years.
I'd be on the floor.
I'd be like, oh, funny joke. Where's the hidden cameras?
Right. For sure.
Wow. God, I can't imagine.
Me either. Carrie says that her dad was able to compartmentalize his life in order to keep his killing separate from his family life. She also stated that she believed her dad had some type of conduct disorder, and obviously there was no treatment for that in the 40s. So I don't know that he's been formally diagnosed with something, but they do. That's what she believes.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had struggles as a child and received no treatment for it because his parents weren't even paying attention to him. So maybe that's why he became an attention whore. No one has said that in my research, but that's the parallel I drew from it. Your parents never paid you attention, so you got to have all this attention.
Well, and I joke with Sam all the time because he watches all those superhero shows like The Flash,
Right.
The Arrow. I'm pretty sure he's just called Arrow. Sorry. I don't watch them, obviously. But I always joke with him that literally every superhero character, their story involves some sort of mommy or daddy issues.
Yes, it does.
To lead them to their vigilante life. And he was like, oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
So they just happen to do it for good. Whereas this guy's like, no, I'm just going to murder women.
Yeah.
And their husbands if they're home. Okay.
Yes. When it comes to her father's trial, she said that watching her father talk about the killings was devastating and her worst nightmare, which I'm sure that it was. And that she's never been able to watch the victims' families' impact statements. And that she and the victims' families have never contacted each other and have kept a polite distance. When asked what she would tell those families if she were able, she reiterated that she wishes she could erase everything so they could have their families back, which I thought was so sweet. And that's a tough situation to be in. I'm glad I'm not in her shoes. I hate it for her. I really do. She suffers from PTSD and said that life's been hard. She now has 2 kids and is very sad that she will one day have to explain to them why their grandpa is in jail. And I bet she is.
Yeah.
Like, at what age do you sit down and tell your kids their grandpa's a serial killer? I don't know.
I would tell them at like 18, kind of like an adoption thing. Like, hey, now that you're an adult.
No, but because of the, internet and stuff, some kid at school is going to find out and they're going to tell them if she doesn't first.
I don't know. You're right. Because she was on television. She wrote the book.
Yeah. I mean, it's totally possible. In the interview, they bring up the officers on the B.T.K. case. One in particular who died from cancer in the post-B.T.K. years. And Carrie said, quote, "It's so unfair that good people have died and my dad gets to live. I love my dad, but it's unfair." Like, this girl's got a good head on her shoulders, okay?
Yeah.
They also asked Carrie about her mom, Paula, and how she was holding up. And Carrie said that the day Dennis Rader was arrested, her mom moved out of the house, divorced Dennis, and no one ever lived there again. The city eventually bought the home and demolished it, and it's now a vacant lot. Carrie said that Paula lost everything, her home that she raised her kids in, her income, her husband, and that Paula has had to live with the fact that her whole marriage and her whole life was a lie. And she deals with a lot of trauma.
That's what I was getting ready to ask is, what about his wife? Like,
yeah,
what is she doing and how is she? Oh my God.
You would feel like your whole life was a lie.
I mean, because it kind of was.
It was. I mean, it was a cover-up, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that he didn't truly love his kids or wife because I don't know that. That would be me speculating, but
I'm sure he did.
It would have to feel like that anyways. So Carrie still resides in Michigan with her husband and kids, and her only communication with her dad has been the occasional letter. Evidently, her brother Brian has visited their dad, but Carrie has not and says she doesn't think she ever will. She did write her dad and told him that she hopes he will ask God for forgiveness. Dennis apparently told her he had asked for forgiveness, and while Carrie wants to believe him, she also believes he might just be throwing faith up in his letters because he knows it's important to her.
That's what I was thinking too.
She said that she still has night terrors and never stops struggling with thoughts of suicide. She also said that she tries to lead a normal, good life and raise her kids right, but despite all that, people try to tell her she isn't a victim and that she has no right to speak up, and that people harass and mock her in real life and on social media. Yes. And let me tell you, Carrie Rossen is an
I will help you up on this soapbox.
Bystander. She's an innocent bystander that has to pay for her father's horrific crimes, not hers, which isn't right.
She did nothing wrong.
She's a victim, and I will die on that mountain with that statement.
And I'll be on that mountain with you.
Yes.
Because I am not here for killer's family blaming, because there's no way that he lived a double life. How is she supposed to know? Why do people do that?
Grown adults all around him, employers, neighbors, church members, didn't realize that he was BTK. Why would she
Exactly.
He's taking her fishing and like planting flowers with her and taking her sledding and like, being a good dad. And she is a victim and she does have a right to speak out. But also, as a kid, what are you really going to do? You know what I'm saying? At 13, even if she had suspected, which she in no way did suspect that, but you know what I'm saying? If it were a different situation and you suspected that your father was like involved in some sort of criminal life, what are you going to do about it at 13?
Yeah, you're not going to do anything because you're probably not going to believe it. Like, even if you saw something, you'd be like, there's no way, that's my dad. I must have imagined that.
Yeah, no.
I get it.
Especially when he's like a good dad. If he was a crappy dad, you might be like, yeah, I could see he would do something like that. But
right, like it makes sense, but no.
So, and you know, the brother has lived a life pretty much out of the public eye. I mean, so I didn't dig on him. He doesn't want to be interviewed. He's not here for that. And that's totally his right. I respect that. But I'm really glad that she has spoken out because I feel like that's the perspective we don't get very often.
I don't know of any other ones other than her that I can think of anyway. I'm sure they're out there, but...
Right. There might be for like less notorious, you know. I hope that people will leave her alone and be nice to her.
Like leave Brittany alone, but leave Carrie alone.
Leave Carrie alone. Leave her alone. And so that is the story of the notorious B.T.K. and the impact his crimes had on his family.
Loved this episode.
This
was definitely a Christmas present to me, so thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
And it makes me want to go watch B.T.K.
I know. We should do that.
Love our podcast? Then hit that subscribe button and leave us a review.
We're also on Patreon. Head on over to patreon.com/truecrimebuzz and join us today for access to all of our exclusive content, including bonus episodes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at TC Buzz Podcast.
And last but not least, you can check out our website at truecrimebuzz.com.
Until next time, cheers.